Welcome to the Sutherland Report. Thank you for giving me your time. I'm going to get straight into this because I don't have to tell you that there is so much going on. One of the wonderful delights of this is being able to talk to people who I think know what's going on. So we're going to ask John Haller that big question. John, my friend, how are you, sir, this morning?
Well, I'm doing okay. I mean, the weather here in Ohio, Central Ohio, is beautiful. But I told you beforehand, I look at the world, and it seems that everybody in the world has gone completely mad or bonkers. I don't know if that's an English word or not, but and that the only sane people left are you and me. And I'm not so sure about you, and I'm questioning myself. These days. It's one of these things we've watched and analyze things, but it's really chaotic, and I think in some respects the United States, which people have long viewed as the sort of the bastion of democracy, and although we're not technically a democracy, but we except in the terms that we vote for our representatives. But it's there's a lot to be concerned about in the United States in terms of the rule of law. And I'm a lawyer, and I'm watching this happen, and it's pretty chaotic. I mean, I'm just sort of looking here at a couple news sources that I look at, and it's just like we sort of knew these days were coming, but then they're here, and we're sort of wondering, why are they here? And how do we deal with them?
You started our sit down with, are we both mad? Are we bonkers? No, we're not mad. We're not bonkers, but it is what we're seeing. So, John, start from a list.
We're not crazy. We're not crazy, but all the other people. I know most of the other people are. I mean, there's. I have a lot of friends who do things like this, and it's just incredibly chaotic. It's just unbelievable.
No, I agree. It's when people say to me, "How are you?" and I say, "I'm fine." It's all the others. But John, where do you want to start in regard to America? I mean, the big thing. We've got these. We've got the riots going on in California. We've had our friend Patrick Wood and also yourself raising concerns about Peter Thiel, Plantier, about this whole digital construct, the digitalization of America, etc., and then across the world. Where do you want to start? Because these are huge issues.
So I have not looked at the Times of London for a couple of days. I do read that. I think they sort of cover the lot, and they kind of present both sides of the issue. But I'm just I look at a lot of different news sources, and it's almost as if people live on different planets. Good. So I see the governor of California saying these are mostly peaceful protests. I see a news report from LA, from one of the big stations in LA, that people are just gathering to watch cars burn. They're just enjoying the day out watching cars burn. And I'm like, I don't understand. I feel like there's this massive propaganda campaign to make it look like there are not riots going on. There are not protests going on. There are not planned protests all across America for Saturday, I believe. And that's done by these leftist groups, and they're funded. I watch videos of the police, establishing lines to keep people controlled, and then they pan the camera over, and there are pallets of bricks.
Yes, yeah.
How is this happening? And the pallets of bricks actually have like identifying codes on them. And so I'm wondering, why aren't people or citizen journalists going out and identifying those codes and finding where those came from? Look, remember the protest in Canada. They could track who was donating to the truckers and when, but we can't figure out who's funding these protests and that type of thing. I think we're living in this big theatrical show, I think. And so, I mean, I'll just give you an example. So I look at the New York Times or the LA Times, and they're like mostly peaceful protests. And the threat to democracy is the president who's trying to control these protests. They're shutting down businesses.
Yes.
They're destroying the lives of people. There are rules of law, whether you agree with them or not. We just went through 4 years in the United States, actually 8 out of the last 12 years. 12 of the last 16 years of these administrations that had a completely anti-American agenda in to try to control things.
Yeah.
And look, I know there are immigrants that are here that are fine. Okay. I encounter them all the time. But there are rules that we're never in America have never been against reasonable immigration. That has never, ever been the case. If anybody tells you that, there is stupid Marxist leftists that's trying to push an agenda. And so I watch the things. Trump is the one who's, he's making everybody hate. It's not what he's doing. I'm watching video after video after video of people throwing deadly weapons, bricks onto moving cars from overpasses.
Yes.
People die this way. That's a deadly weapon. Those people should be arrested immediately with all the force necessary because they're attempting murder. I don't care what they think or anything like that. And something needs to be done to restore order. I'm watching protest in Ireland. And of course, here's the headline from the New York Times this morning. Hate fuels second night of violence in Northern Ireland. That's people have sort of reached the breaking point with all of this stuff. And that's probably by design. And so how do you respond to that? That's the question. It's very frustrating. I'm watching these ridiculous court cases, nationwide injunctions, and that type of thing against the president. So look, there's a way to stop Donald Trump. Vote him out of office. Impeach him. You don't have the votes to do that. So they're just saying, okay, we'll just do violence. It's very maddening.
Having been under a number of underpasses in your country, they are huge. When you are throwing bricks, boulders, and people think that this is acceptable, it is not acceptable whatsoever. And then, John, would you verify this? That people are talking about that people are being paid to do this action. When you talk about the bricks, I'm immediately thinking of a few years ago when piles of bricks were then appearing in Dallas for downtown activity then, and people didn't believe us, and there it is. You're right, because you're putting your legal brain on. How is this going to play out? Because I don't want to see this in any other place. Is this going to escalate, as you've said? What's this action of Saturday that they're on about?
Well, look, I think it's the attempt is to escalate it. So the question is, do you take the bait,
right,
and stand up against it? I really don't know. I mean, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard to determine what's true. So I see a lot of posts about, these planned demonstrations across America on, I think it's June 14th, which is Flag Day. That's the day that Trump's having the big military parade in Washington, D.C. I don't know. I'm sort of trying to be a little detached from that, but they're having a protest about we don't have kings in America. But then I see like Gavin Newsom out there just
Absolutely.
campaigning for 2028 and playing to his base, and a governor or not a mayor in Los Angeles that has a complete agenda to completely demoralize the police.
You mean, is that Karen Bass? Are you
Karen
referring?
Bass, yeah, she's a Marxist.
Yes, absolutely. People need to look into her with her links politically, and also the amount of flights that she took to Cuba, and various other comments that she'd made. This came out in regard to the fires of California. Do you remember that time?
Well, yeah, I don't know. Was she in Cuba when those fires took place? Is that?
I think that you could be right in saying that. Remember when that reporter was trying to pin her down in the lift, or where she was coming through the airport, and she wouldn't answer anything. But her political history is extremely questionable. Extremely questionable.
I mean, here's an article in the New York Times this morning. They have a section, they call it the 47th president, and the headline is NYPD, New York Police Department's cooperation with ICE, Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement, must be investigated, City Council says. What planet do these people live on? That's the question. It's it's very concerning. It's very volatile.
Well, you've discussed this. Patrick Wood has discussed this. I've discussed this elsewhere. But the point is, before the Canadian election, it was suddenly then someone then realized that Mark Carney's wife, aunt, when she was alive, or maybe she's just alive, was Frances Fox Piven of the Cloward and Piven Marxist strategy to overload the system and bust it, and then seek societal change. These are the two people that stood behind Bill Clinton, as a friend of mine pointed out, in his when he was president, to then bring in what's called voter motor legislation, that means that you could register for vote on the same day that you could then go and vote. You could drive up and do this. I'm throwing this out as in these are the Marxist strategies that are going on, and to cause riots and then to open the gates for illegal immigration. I am not making any of this up. I ask people to go and look at this, because that is what's going on. That's what's going on over here, because our illegal immigration and the boats coming over the channel, they're not going to stop any of it. It's about busting the system.
So, and we live in this sort of this absurd theater of the absurd, I guess is the way to say it. So I watch, for example, I watch Piers Morgan. He has on Dave Smith, who is a comedian, or now I'm forgetting his name. Murray says is a literal clown.
Douglas Murray. Yeah.
Douglas Murray. Yeah. Thank you. And the great attorney, advocate, rational human being, Natasha Hausdorff,
brilliant,
from the UK.
Yep.
And Piers interrupts her 60 times in the interview.
Yep.
And Murray's like, he didn't want to hear the truth, but he let the clown speak. The guy who literally is a clown in life. Yeah, so maybe he's a sophisticated comedian. Okay, so he lets a sophisticated comedian speak unimpeded, and Natasha can't get a word in edgewise. And Piers is calling her an immoral, evil idiot.
Well, he actually says it's BS as well, doesn't it? He actually uses, I think, that word a couple of times.
Used more than a few times in a stretch. So I'm watching all this unfold, and it's really crazy. And then we have Israel and Iran, and we'll get to that, I'm sure.
No, John, that's the point that we've reached, haven't we? Where it's trying to respect each other's opinion and reach out to the other side, and to sit down and say, could we actually have a discussion and they actually don't want to do that. All they want to do is have a shouting match, and that interview said it all. And that Morgan, really, it's all about him, doesn't want to listen to facts, and then on other occasions at times he may push back or challenge things. But it has to be said that the propaganda war, and we get onto this, the propaganda war is, in our opinion, is full bore, and I think we have a responsibility, like we're doing now, to get involved and to push back. I mean, the way he treated Natasha was beyond disgusting, because she knows international law and she knows the facts, and has wonderfully explained that so many times since 7th of October and well before that. But John, have we reached a point where people just don't want to listen to the truth?
Well, they want to listen to what tickles their ears. I mean, that's a biblical concept.
Yes.
They gather to themselves teachers that tickle their ears, and they ignore some of the hard truths that are out there.
Can you, without putting you on the spot, could you give me an example of that?
Well, this will probably get me in some trouble with some friends. So look, when Trump came into office, there's a very big division in the Christian community here about Trump.
Yeah.
And in the Bible prophecy community. So I've said from the beginning, I'll be transactional with Trump. When he does something that I like, I'll be on board with that. But when he does something that I don't like, I'm going to speak out about it. So one of the things he did in the first day or two in office was he pardoned the January 6 people, which I know has been a passion of yours to investigate and look at and write about and talk about. And so there's that's good. He also said that he wanted to crack down or stop the discrimination against Christians. So there was excuse me 1 second here. There was a there was a concerted effort, but there was a concerted effort by the Biden Justice Department to go after Christians who say protested had pray-ins at abortion clinics, and some of these people were arrested and sentenced to 7, 8, 9, 10 years in prison. Sometimes they were in their 80s. Yes. They were no threat to anyone. Nobody stopped anybody from getting an abortion, but people didn't want to be confronted with the message that these people had, so they put them in prison. So Trump pardoned all those people, which I'm fully on board with.
Yep.
And Biden on his way out, he commuted a lot of sentences that hardly got any press. I just found out yesterday that a former client of mine who'd been convicted, she had her sentence commuted. And I'm fine with that. Okay. This is the way the justice system works, but there was a lot done to protect people who had done the January 6th prosecutions. So Trump tried to right the ship there. That was great. And that was good. But then he set up this faith office, and he put Paula White in charge of that. And I have a lot of problems with her. And I've said that. And I have friends who they're all excited. They're very excited that Paula White's there. But now what we're doing is we're seeing a lot of people coming into that faith office that have very bad theology or from very bad religions. And I said early on, this was going to be a big mess, and he should do that. Stop the discrimination against Christians, but don't set up this faith office, because it's going to go the wrong way. And it appears that it has. So that would be an example. And then, the other example too, and this is a big controversy because you mentioned Patrick Wood earlier. Patrick, I'm glad Patrick, he had a massive stroke, a very serious stroke a couple of years ago. Everybody thought he was done for, but the Lord healed him. A lot of people prayed. He was healed. Amen. He's come back. He stayed. He was here last summer and stayed with us at the house. Last fall, stayed with us at the house for a few days, and we did a conference together with our friend Mike Spalding. And so I'm glad God preserved Patrick for this moment, because the message that Patrick has is incredibly important on technocracy. Yes,
absolutely.
So, by the way, I'm going to do another technocracy, transhumanism, technology roundtable on June 25th, Wednesday evening, June 25th at, I think it's 7 p.m. Eastern. I might have to move that back about 15 minutes because now I just remember I'm working till 7 p.m. that day. But but we will be doing it around 7 p.m. Eastern on the 25th. And we try to keep that to a couple hours, but it's almost impossible now because there's so much going on in that space. And that's where Trump comes in. So it's a really big quandary in the big, beautiful bill, which has not passed both houses of Congress yet. It's only passed the House. There's a provision there that says that they're not going, their states, individual states like California or other states cannot regulate AI for 10 years.
Right.
That means AI will never be regulated.
Yeah.
And because in 10 years, I don't think we're going to recognize it. So Patrick's very concerned about the way that it's going. I'm in regular contact with people within the tech industry, and they're saying, look, the models that they've built for AI are to continually advance.
Yes.
And so then the question becomes, how do you even stop it? How do you regulate it? And if you're in America, we see AI being used in places like Ukraine, on the recent attack by the Ukrainian military on the Russian installations, the use of drone technology. And so nobody else in the world is regulating it. And so do you want to be the country in the world that regulates it and doesn't allow it to develop? And how do you do that? And then we have problems with immigration and everything. And part of the way to fight that is to have data.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
So Palantir, which is a big tech company, and I think they all sort of come out of this consortium of guys, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, I can't remember the guy's name that started Palantir. They all sort of have this Sam Altman at OpenAI, the PayPal thing. They all sort of came out of PayPal, and then they were, Altman and Musk were in OpenAI. Then they had a split up, and remember 2 years ago there was a guy named Eliezer Ludkowski who's been involved in this industry from the beginning, and he was saying, we need to regulate this. We need to stop this. It's going to get out of control. And if people aren't going to do this, we need to go bomb their server farms. Well, none of that's happened, has it? I mean, nothing's been done to regulate it. Now, our Congress is saying no states in the United States can regulate it either. And that probably comes from lobbying by all the big technocrats like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and the guys at Palantir. So
I don't think people have really heard this. Because Patrick's been explaining this, you've just explained it brilliantly. I don't think people are really aware of this, and without giving the game away, you're aware of the amount of data centers being built. So am I. Patrick referred to, this huge one that's being built. I think it's in either UAE or Saudi Arabia. That's 10 square miles, and all the the effects of that. You've just brilliantly explained that. If you have not got regulation, then Sarah Connor can't even, if she came back, can't even stop this. This is extremely dangerous.
It's true. And then, in the New York Times, I'll give them credit for doing a good expose on it. I don't think maybe they understand the issue. I think they've long been concerned about privacy issues, but now Palantir's been given the authority in our government, by our government, to sort of consolidate all of the data that they have on individuals in one place. Look, and this is, when we talk about this from a Bible prophecy standpoint, this is certainly the foundations of the beast system that I think is going to come in play. We read about that in Revelation 13 and 17 and 18. And so the question is, can we stop that? But the point is, you just pointed out, and I think I talked about it last week or week before, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and others are building, they're big on the technology and artificial intelligence and that type of thing. And I think it's the UAE is building this huge data center. And so the question is, so we could regulate everything in the world, regulate everything that we want to do here in the United States, but they're developing it all over the world anyway. And so it's a big quandary, and I know people who've gone and talked to Mike Johnson at the Speaker of the House of Representatives here in the United States, like, why aren't you doing something about this? And the question is, I don't really know what's done. I know what's happening, and I can kind of tell you what's happening, and I don't really have an answer for doing this because, Ukraine's going to develop their own stuff. Israel's going to develop it. The UAE, the Arab countries, the Muslim countries, India, India is a big, full of a lot of, a big country full of a lot of smart people. China's going to use it. I mean, North Korea is going to use it. So what do we do in that world? And I'll be honest with you. I don't have an answer. I've often said that this beast system, when it comes, some of it will be a good idea. So when we have people destroying the peace and safety of major cities in the United States, you could say, well, why don't we use the data we have to find out where these people are and unpack how they're being funded? And I can't say that that's a bad idea.
Well, over here, they want to bring in what some people are calling the Brit card in regard to digital ID, etc., etc. And of course, by permanently having this immigration coming in that is not stopping, it's a way of facilitating that. And the other thing I just thought of when we're looking at Arab states, in this sort of big data factories that they're building, then 10 square miles, is the resource of water greatly needed in those systems to cool everything? And that raises another interesting issue.
Well, it does, except that and this kind of raises another issue I even hadn't thought about us talking about, is these are the oil-rich Arab states that are doing this. Saudi Arabia is moving forward with building NEOM. They're moving forward with building this huge building in Riyadh called the Muqab, and it's like 25 Empire State Buildings would fit inside this one building. Wow. Data that I've read indicates that Saudi Arabia is purchasing about 20% of all the steel produced on planet Earth right now.
Could you explain what NEOM is?
NEOM is a city. It's sort of a you can say it's sort of the insane dream of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to build this city called the Line. It's supposed to go for 100 miles. Now, I don't know if they'll ever get this done. It's technology. It's supposed to be like 1,500 feet on a side, and I don't know how many, 800 or 1,000 feet wide, mirrored on the outside all the way through the desert. And you can go to Google Maps today and you'll see that this is being built.
Right.
The foundations of this, hang on just a second. I have a having a little trouble coughing this morning. Now I think I already took that pill, so never mind. We're having a lot of trouble here. I was outside all day yesterday working at the golf course where I work, and we have very hazy sunshine because of the Canadian fires, and the air quality is very bad. So when you're outside in a long time, it kind of gets to you. And it's bad again today, and it's beautiful weather, but it's just kind of hazy, and it's okay if you don't have to breathe, you know.
Well, that's a bit of an issue, but it does show geographically with what's the awful fires in Canada, and geographically how that's come down into the States, the effect in that area.
So anyway, yeah, and there's been some pretty good graphics in Washington Post and New York Times about that. But so the city, you know, the city's being built. It's data AI driven. They're having big conferences about it, and you can go to. So I'm going to pull up a map here. Well, I'll try it later, but if we have time, it's incredible. I mean, and the question is, how is any of this going to be stopped? And the answer is, it's not.
Yeah.
You know, it's but you can go to a map, go to Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt, rotate the map, do it in 3D on Google Earth, and you can see the foundations of this thing have been, at least the preliminary work has been done. It goes for 100 miles.
Wow. There's a big AI conference, John, in a few weeks' time in Geneva, a UN conference. They are really racking this up as well and having discussions about this, and also online YouTube links to all this subject as well.
Yeah, but look, nothing's going to be done to stop it. You know, that's the thing. It's just going to be. Here, let me maybe I can show you.
When you say about being transactional with Trump, I suppose Trump's turning around and saying, well, all these other countries are doing it. We have to participate. If we want to be front and center and ahead, then we can't just go, no. Is that a fair point, that how these people are thinking in this situation?
Sure. I mean, and so you look, he's big on his relationships with the Gulf states, with Qatar, or however you say it, and Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, you know, and he's trying to bring them into the Abraham Accords, which is sort of a project of his, led up by his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who, by the way, I believe that there was a recent merger between the Abraham Accords Association group that Jared Kushner had established and still maintains, and they have a big branch in the UK, and the Hudson Institute, which I think is a conservative think tank. I think it's Hudson Institute. I'd have to go back and check my notes on that. So I don't want to make them, accuse them falsely of something. But you know, we have this just incredible growth of this AI and everything. And
I'll bring the map up, John. I'll bring the map up.
Okay, so this is Saudi Arabia, and if you look here, you know, it starts here in the coast, and you can see it goes for, like, you see how the line is being constructed all through this mountain range, 100 miles. And there are big ports being built, there are golf courses and everything. And I've heard that the construction progress has been about 25% of what they want to build is sort of done. Now, I don't know that they'll ever make it, but the point is it's being worked on.
Right.
And it's going to be all AI driven.
Is this a good point to remind people of who Qatar finance in regard to the situation with Hamas?
Sure. I mean, you know, Qatar finances Hamas. They're the Muslim Brotherhood. And this is kind of an interesting issue. I think our mutual friend, Yishai Fleischer's been talking a lot about this is, Israel needs to run Israel.
Yes.
They need to run these areas. They need to govern these areas. They can have people that aren't Jewish living there, but you just cannot allow this to occur. So now Hamas, big article in the New York Times today about Hamas is weak in Gaza and that sort of thing. And, but they're recruiting new fighters. And this is the problem. And so Israel has devastated Gaza, much to the chagrin of Greta Thunberg and a bunch of other lunatics in the world.
So on the Free Palestine flotilla, I believe, in the last couple
of years. I don't know. They were bringing in a few bags of flour and a couple boxes of baby formula to help. It was something that it was a mere microscopic percentage of what Israel allows in there every day, which is kind of interesting that it's the first war I ever remember where the people who started the war,
absolutely,
the other side has to feed and fund and all this other stuff. It's absurd. And my question is, Mark, we're over a year and a half since Israel started dismantling Gaza, and they still have problems with weapons. How does the world say that Hamas should have spent all of these billions on weapons and stockpiling weapons? There were just a number of Israeli soldiers, IDF soldiers, killed the other day.
Yes.
In Gaza. How are they? And they spent all this money on this elaborate tunnel system, none of which was done to benefit Gaza.
No.
And I've been down to the border there about 10 months before this happened, this attack from Gaza. And these people support they support Hamas. And it's all over our country. And you see all of these people with Hamas armbands wearing the keffiyeh tearing our cities down right now.
Well, there's been, with the incredible people like Einat Wilf, with her research into UNRWA, how these things are finances, the whole thing of the right of return and the permanent refugeeism as a culture and as a status. We need 3 hours to go through the history of that, and I encourage people to look at her work and others. But this is what we're dealing with, and as you said, a tunnel system that's the equivalent of the London Underground. And now, and I want to make this point, now we've got, I find it appalling. I disagree with it whatsoever. Is the fact that the UK government and looks like Australia is the UK government is turning around and saying we want sanctions against 2 members of the Knesset of the Israeli government. We've then got Australia stopping someone that you have interviewed, which is Hillel Fuld, going into Australia because they don't like his tweets. This is madness. We've had Mark Carney, the total globalist elitist. It's a family show, so I won't swear. Then, Cloward and Pivenist. Then again, we're going to sanction Israel, etc., etc. This is, to me, this is off the charts. You just quickly, the food and the aid that's been going on. Just a reminder, Hamas until recently have been taking that. They're now trying to distribute that aid in a different way to take the funding element that Hamas have, because they sell the aid. They are working hard to take that away. And I understand that Hamas may have attacked the people, the NGO and the Americans that are trying to sort that out. There's no moral compass here, John. You are absolutely right.
Everything's crazy. It's so Hillel Fuld, I don't know. I suppose the reason that the Canadian government has given is that it's
the Australian government.
Sorry, Australian guys. It's hard sometimes to distinguish between the two since they seem to operate in lockstep. They're both sanctioning.
And we are.
Smotrich, the finance minister of Israel, and Ben Gvir, one of the security guys in Netanyahu's coalition. And look, you can disagree with these guys politically, but where have they sanctioned Hamas in any way in Canada or Australia?
Well, we've got the BBC over here, calling them a prescribed terrorist organization, and all of this. We've got all these other lefty lunatics joining this. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's mad. You've made a very interesting comment there. In lockstep, Canada, the UK, Australia. Let's just remind ourselves, Albanese has been in the past. Well, he is a pro inverted commas Palestinian supporter. He's been on those marches in Australia in the past. His left-wing ideology. Penny Wong, when she comes out with her nonsense, let's call it how it is. And we do need to, and we are pushing back, and we do need to push back, because to fight this propaganda war. And you're absolutely right, as Melanie Phillips talks about the moral code. The West, we're losing our moral code. But someone pointed this out, how over the last, and I'm trying to think of his name, I think Elon Levy has just interviewed him on State of the Nation, where over the last 30 years, the other side then, in regard taking from Yasser Arafat, etc., there's taking a leaf there in regard to propaganda financed by Qatar and all the rest. That is why we're seeing all the effects in our universities, because they have gone for it by financing universities across America, etc. This is why we're at this point. And to push this propaganda arm and to persuade young people to take out their moral compass and to act like lunatics, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's hard. So, I mean, let's look at Hillel Fuld, for example. And his brother Ari was killed almost exactly 7 years ago, I think, 2018 or 2019, I think. And Ari Fuld was sort of a larger than life Israel guy. I mean, he loved Israel, and I followed him on social media. I think he was a Facebook friend. And I remember the day I was on my way to church, and Avi Abelo got on, and he popped up on my feed, and he was at the Western Wall sobbing that Ari had been killed. He went to the store. I've been there. I've been down to a frat where Ari and his wife and children lived. I think they had 4 children. I believe a very interesting personal story. I think they were born in the same hospital on the same day in New York, and later met and married, had the children, and he loved Israel. So his wife said, "Would you go down to the store to get this?" He goes down to the store, and a young terrorist stabbed him in the back, severed an aorta. Ari chased him down and shot him. But the point was, in some of the recent, since they've been exchanging hostages and people in prison, the guy that killed Ari got released.
Yeah.
And where did he go? I mean, are people tracking this guy? Ari prevented him from killing other people that day by, tracking him down and following him and shooting him, so he couldn't hurt anybody else. So it would be reasonable to assume that Ari's family, who loved Ari, would post something, if they have social media and a social media presence like Hillel Fuld does, and he posts something that's against the ideology that led this young terrorist to do this. You have the situation with people in the UK who've spoken out against this. Now they're banned from entering a supposedly free country. It's it's difficult to explain how evil and just really bad for humanity this is. And the question is, if you can't even talk about the enemy, the elephant in the room, how are you ever going to do anything to stop it?
I hear you, and what we've got, and well, it's a bit like this sounds awful to say. It's like when Sinwar was released, and then we look at the consequences of then what happened on October the 7th. These people are put in this, horrendous position, because they want hostages back. Understandably, they want soldiers back that have been taken. But you're absolutely right, John. Because what we've got, and also over here, is we've got a prime minister who calls himself an international lawyer. We have got this international lawfare that is going on at the same time. Then with the whole technocracy mindset, because they really don't want the little people, us, to have a vote. They just want to rule. In fact, they'd actually like to get rid of the people. So we look at the row that has been going on before October the 7th in Israel in regard to judicial reform. We look at what's happening in America, where people are turning around and going, no, Trump, you can't do this. This judge says this. We have the same over here. We have a Supreme Court that Tony Blair brought in around about 2003, 4.
Yeah, I would highly, in that regard, I would highly recommend. There's a channel, Oracle Films, on YouTube, and they have a very good video out about the agenda, their vision, your future, talking about technocracy. Patrick Wood is prominently featured in that. I don't know if Alex Newman is in that or not. I haven't been able to watch.
Yes,
okay, so I've been getting emails from my friends Alex and Newman and Patrick Wood about that, and it's sort of this has been their dream and their goal for 100 years.
Oh yeah.
And and it goes back to the old thing that I've said many times, that how does this stuff happen in the end times? That it happens gradually, then suddenly, and we're sort of at that gradually, then suddenly stage on many things. And there's sort of thresholds where, oh well, now that's a problem. And so technocracy, AI, and everything. I just don't see it being rolled back right now. I think people need to be aware of it, and they need to prepare. And we talk about digital IDs. Look, we've all had digital IDs for a very long time in the West. It's people can find you and track you. Now they're trying to centralize it with Palantir and the United States government. And this is their dream, that they'll tell you what to do. They know better. They're smarter than you. And, but all of this is happening at a time where we see all these other societal problems, like population collapse, demographic collapse. And in Japan, I think 2 years ago, they lost 1 million people in population. Last year, they went down 2 million, and it'll probably be 4 or 5 million in the next year or so. Are they having a massive pandemic in Japan? Are people being systematically killed? No, what happened was Japan cut their birth rate to the point now where their population is declining. China's probably declining in the tens of millions of people per year right now.
Yes. Yeah.
And the issue is, we've never seen this in human history. I mean, there was the Black Plague that took out about half of Europe a long time ago, and that had massive geopolitical ramifications and wars and that type of thing. And now we're seeing it happen, throughout the world, in the West, in Russia, Ukraine, everywhere. Populations are collapsing. The population pyramids are skewing towards older people. We've never really seen this before, and I'm not sure exactly how we, this. I think this is all part of this end time scenario, the reality of the end times that we're living in. And the question is, how long does that and what do we do? I mean, we're living in it. We're living in the reality of that right now. It's hard to deal with. I'll admit it's very daunting. Now, in some respects, my life seems very normal, but then we could have protests down, 25 miles down the road in Columbus. They could spread. It could shut down Columbus. I don't know. I'm just saying, as we live at a very, very volatile time.
I mean, again, I've said this a number of times, where we want people to wake up. We want people to be aware of what's going on. John, you do your presentation sermon every Sunday, a lot of Sundays, in regard to what's happening in the world. How do you see the state of the American church or American people in regard to this? Are they awake? Are they awake to going on? I had a very interesting conversation with a dear friend of mine who was very concerned how, I won't reveal where he is, but in his part of the world in the States, he just feels people are asleep and just think, I say it respectfully, that now Trump's in, everyone can just sit back and, he will sort this out. Where your system is actually designed for everyone to be participatory from the scoreboard level up. What do you, in the last sort of couple of minutes, what are your thoughts?
I think I'll tell you, I think it's a very difficult situation that we live in. I don't really know the answer. I mean, I think we need to act and do the right thing. If you have a voice, exercise your voice, warn people about it. But yeah, I think by and large, the church is not doing it. There's clearly a community within the evangelical church in America that's not falling for it. But Mark, I'm going to give you an example. For 35 years ago, a thing started in Toronto. That's where it kind of had its big outbreak. This laughing revival.
Yep.
Mark, there was an article in the Atlantic magazine last week about all the people, John and Carol are not, are still pushing this laughing revival stuff, calling it the move of the Holy Spirit, and it's growing. And, and a lot of us spent a lot of time warning about it. There were great books written about it. And here it is, it's still going on, but now it's sort of merging with this worldly spirituality and experiential theology. And I'm very concerned about it. I don't know. I guess I've known that it's been out there. I've kind of moved away from the large evangelical movements in my own personal life, and now it's still there, and it's a problem. And I don't know what the answer is, Mark. I just know that we need to stand for truth. And we need to do another program soon, because we haven't talked about Israel and Iran and what's going on there. That could break loose any moment now.
Well, Israel, I mean, I'll say Israel needs to be in our prayers, constantly, as we're called to pray for the peace and the prosperity of Jerusalem, and it needs to be in our prayers, particularly at this time and all those geopolitical moves. And yeah, John, it'd be great. You could kindly look at your schedule. Let's do this as soon as we are able. And I'm just as disturbed as you when you talked about what's happened in Toronto, and we've seen other things like that, where I'll just voice it. I see it as a huge diversion. And as you touched on the verse at the beginning about tickling ears. Sorry if I've just upset a load of people, but we have to speak the truth and say the reality of what's going on. John, I just want to, any other final thoughts in the last minute?
Look, I think you need to get your heart prepared for what's going on. I think that this is it's going to be a difficult period to live in. That you need to be associating with other like-minded believers. You can usually find them through different communities. I know that our friends have set up the Remnant Fellowship online to kind of help facilitate that. On Facebook, I really don't know what. I know Jesus is coming back. I know I'm okay. I know where I'm going, and I will tell you, Mark. I don't know how many times a day I think, like, I'm glad I'm in my 70s, because there's a certain terminus point for me in one way or the other. But I'm looking, but I have family members, young, great nieces and nephews and stuff, and I'm wondering, what do we do to help them out and to protect them? It's a very difficult time. I'll admit that.
Well, I hear you. From our point of view, people need Jesus as their Lord and Savior, right?
Right.
We stand on that and move forward. We need to be praying for Israel at this time and the events that are going on. And I say it respectfully, that there is no time for us to sit on the sofa, or, as you say, on your side of the pond, sit on the couch. We have to engage, because I don't see us leaving here anytime soon, John. And that is not a popular comment to say in certain quarters, but I believe it's true.
I believe, I agree with you that I think we're around here for a while. So figure out, deal with it, I guess, is the best way to say.
Definitely. John, I'm going to play us out. As always, just thank you so much, my friend, for sitting down and having an amazing discussion. And yes, we need to discuss Iran and Israel as soon as possible and give an update on that. John, thank you for your time, my friend. I'll play us out and I'll say goodbye on the other side.
Okay, thanks, Mark.